I'm really nervous, so I'm just going to kind of get right into this. So my name is Hailey, and I'm a grade 11 visual arts student, or contemporary art student. I don't know what it is anymore, they keep changing it. 2 years ago, I traveled with my family to Eastern Europe, specifically Prague and Budapest. This was important to my family and I because we wanted to see historical sites that related to our Jewish heritage, along with just seeing these beautiful cities. While I was there, I was able to see and learn about the history of these cities, as well as visit ghettos, synagogues, and Holocaust memorials. Throughout this whole experience, what struck me was how all the tourists had no interest in these sites. That although they went out of their way to visit them, they were doing it simply for the photos so that they could cross off the site on their top 10 things to do in Prague list. One of these locations was Pinkas Synagogue. This is a synagogue located inside the old Jewish ghetto in Prague, which houses a cemetery as well as a Holocaust memorial. The memorial included names of all the people in Eastern Europe who had been killed during the Holocaust. These names covered the walls of the whole building in an overwhelming and saddening display. Although creating an incredibly somber feeling, the memorial made the circumstances seem unfathomable and distant from the viewer. As I was on my way home and reflecting on this experience, I decided that I wanted to find a way to allow people to understand and relate to these events. This all brings me to my actual art. When I got back to school in grade 10, I was struggling to make work. I spent too much time overthinking concepts, worrying about how pieces would turn out and how my classmates and teachers would view them. Then I was assigned a Goethe Project. For this project, I decided to focus on my experiences on this trip and reflect on the events that had happened there. I began focusing on other aspects of the memorial there, specifically a cemetery that was used while the Jewish ghetto was still running in Prague. This cemetery was the only location where people in the ghetto were allowed to bury their dead, and because of this, it became stacked with hundreds of layers. I saw it as being hugely disrespectful towards the people and showed how grotesquely they had been treated. Over time, my project evolved, and I began trying to do work about the actual memorial there rather than the cemetery located there. I started by creating paintings based off the names and the memorial there, but that later changed to where I am currently. So now I'm making plaster carvings. By the way, this is the memorial. Now I'm making plaster carvings based off of the Holocaust Memorial in Prague. Each of these pieces are directly taken from a piece of the memorial and allow the viewer to separate specific people from this huge picture. By carving each piece separately, I allow the viewer to physically pick up the piece so it becomes more personal to the viewer. As well, the medium allows the materials to be more permanent, magnifying the idea that it's important that these events that happen should continue to be remembered. When I was 12 years old, I had a bat mitzvah and I participated in this project called Twinning, which is part of Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial or Museum in Israel. This involved having a bat mitzvah in honor of a child who died in the Holocaust before they were able to have their own. Similar to my art piece, this allows for people to focus on separate aspects or people within this event, allowing you to be able to understand and relate to it more effectively. This event in history has greatly impacted a huge portion of the world and a whole group of people. And I think that it's important that we continue to work to remember the events that occurred so that it never happens again. Last week, my grandmother sadly passed away after living with Alzheimer's for almost 13 years. As I grew up, I watched her slowly begin to forget her family, friends, and the people around her until she didn't even remember who she was. Growing up, this experience has become important to me and to remember to save memories from the past. Although I can't bring back my grandmother's memories or make up for the time that I lost with her, I can still work to remember other people's past and the rest of the history of my family. As Holocaust survivors begin to get older and incapable of telling their stories, it is now up to us to continue to teach future generations, not skip over the unit in history because you assume that everyone knows it, or brush over the subject because it's too sensitive or hard to hear, but reflect on our past so that we can remember the sacrifices that people made and work to build a better future for all of us. I can't fix what's happened in the past, what has happened to my grandmother, or even know that if me or anyone else in my family will get the same disease. But what I can do is continue to share the stories of these people and work to make sure that their memories aren't forgotten. Yay, thank you.